Hello and welcome to another episode of RGU Talk. I'm Julia and today we'll be talking all things work placements at RGU. As a former RGU placement student, this podcast is especially interesting to me. I'll be talking with Sam, who's the placement manager in the university's Employability Hub, to answer lots of questions including what placements are, where you can undertake a placement, and how the process actually works. So let's get started. Hi Sam, great to have you on the podcast today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Julia. Thanks for having me.
Good, great. So let's kick off with the most important question of the day. Can you explain to our listeners what a placement actually is?
Yeah, a very good question to start with. Yes, so a placement is an academic credit-bearing period of work experience is probably the long-winded title that we could give it. So it's where the students will undertake a work experience element on their course, which is going to gain them credits towards their course of studies here at the university. And it will almost always be connected with the student's field of study.
Great. And do all courses at RGU offer work placements or just some of them?
It's a case that it's a growing number of courses here at the university have got a placement module as part of their studies. It's not every single course, no, but where we have courses that don't have a placement embedded in them, you'll very likely find an element of industrial experience or industrial connection being put in there. So it might be a one-off day visit, trips to organizations. It could be guest lectures, days where companies are coming in and working with students on a workshop program or a guest lecture.
That's great. So all students are getting some sort of work experience then.
Certainly, that's the aim of the university, is to increase the students' employability, and one of the ways we do that is through engaging with industry, to make the degrees valid for the workplace. So for some courses, it's very simple to have a placement because it's quite an industry norm to have something like that. In others, it's not quite a simple fit. Either there's requirements for other aspects to be on the course, such as professional bodies expect certain things that the students have to do, but other ways we embed industrial experience into the courses as a matter of course. And where we've got courses that might not have as much, that is certainly a focus of the university to increase that engagement there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you mentioned before that placements relate to the field of study of the student. Is that always the case, or could a student go and do a placement that was in a different area, for example?
So it's certainly variety comes into that sort of question. Where you've got courses that are being guided by professional bodies such as nursing and pharmacy, physiotherapy, there's a stipulation that the placement is going to have to be in that specific area. For them to pass the course, that is going to be one of the requirements. For other courses, it's going to be a stipulation that is going to have to be connected to their course of study, but because of the nature of a lot of our courses, that doesn't mean it's going to be a specific industry that might be connected to. So for instance, we have accountancy and finance students, we have management students, we have law management students that go out on placements, as well as looking into media studies, looking to other courses, and they can really go to almost any type of sector you could ask for. So we've got students undertaking placements in oil and gas companies, public sector bodies, charities, and we've had students in the armed forces on placements before. We've had students across every type of organisation you could consider have considered and taken students.
Yeah, that's so good. I guess as well, you would have some students that are studying a particular degree, but might go and do a placement that sparks an interest in another field of study as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the big benefits of the placement. The placement is really a chance for students to try dip their toe into the industry before they're 100%, committed and in that graduate, workplace with it. So students get that opportunity to see what it's going to be like in the real world in a protected environment with the university supporting them. So it allows us to go and offer the student that chance to see if this is the right sort of pathway for them. Even within, even if the student knows that the course of study is the right course for them, it might be that they had their heart set on a particular industry or sector or a particular discipline within that, that course of study. And through a placement, they realize that, yes, it is absolutely the thing I want to do. Or they can realize, actually, it's not quite what I thought it was going to be. And it gives them that chance to have a think about it before they've, fully committed down that line of study or that line of work.
Yeah, definitely. And it's great that they can do it during their, third year or whatever stage of the degree that they're doing that as well. In terms of where students actually undertake the placements, do they have to be completed in the local area or can they go further afield?
There's certainly flexibility. Again, this, as a lot of things with placement, it comes down to the course of study, which it, usually stipulates where they can go. So for courses that are going, as I mentioned, courses that are following requirements of government bodies and professional bodies, they will have a bit more restrictions on where they can go. So things like nursing, midwifery, paramedic practice, physiotherapy, for instance, realistically, they are going to be in the local area, more or less. Now, but when I say local area, I'm meaning within Scotland, within the northeast, because, for instance, with nursing and midwifery placements, they could be placed anywhere from Aberdeen, Aberdeenshire, Orkney and Shetland, some of the Highlands, because that is the catchment area that our courses from that school cover. Whereas other courses do have some flexibility. There might be an elective module for some of these courses where the student has the opportunity to go a bit further afield, but generally they have to be in an area that's already been worked out by the university. And in a lot of cases, those placements would be matched and the students would be getting put in a placement environment. Whereas the reverse of that, other schools, so engineering, Scott Sutherland, computing, ABS, creative and cultural business, law, Grays, students have a lot more flexibility in where they can go. Now, predominantly, our students will look to stay within the local area, within Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire for placements, but we can have students going on placement, in Scotland, the UK, Europe, and further afield. So that's something that is possible. It's what we do is make sure the student understands all the potential options that are there. It's going to be their decision as to whether they pursue a placement further afield. Obviously, can't get past the last 18 months without thinking about the impact that COVID has had on the placement map. And in terms of that, it's obviously meant that placements have been a lot closer to home. But it doesn't mean that we haven't had students doing placements outside of the UK. But up till this next year, it's been this last couple of months, it's been allowing more students to consider further afield. But the last year and a half, we've predominantly had students who are from the countries of origin doing placements there.
Yeah, that's understandable. I guess in, normal times it's a great opportunity for students to go and, live and work in a different country. So very exciting. Just another question around placements. Are work placements paid?
This is always the big question we get asked, especially at open days and things like that. And I go back to the how I started the last answer. It's down to the course of study typically as to whether or not a course is going to be paid, and by that it's usually based on what the industry norm is going to be. So for our professional body required placements, such as again nursing, pharmacy, midwifery, paramedic practice, social work, physiotherapy, the placements are not going to be paid. For other courses, again going into sort of the business school, creative and cultural business, law, engineering, Scots, computing, Grays, whether a placement will be paid will generally be based on maybe the industry they're going into the duration that the placement might be as well. So typically placements that are up to 12 weeks are generally unpaid. It's not to say that hosts won't pay, but the norm is that they're not going to be paid. But the key thing to remember, however, is if you're not undertaking a placement, you'd be undertaking a top module of some other sort. So you are getting credits towards your course. It is building towards your degree overall, and also you're getting you're getting experience, gaining the references from an employer and things like that. The general rule that we have here at the university for any placement that's over 12 weeks in duration is there is an expectation of payment from it. So we do expect payment to come to those sorts of placements. There are, for year-long, placements, we've got some students that are going out for a full year of their third year of their course. And there's a stipulation there that we're expecting payment for students to be doing that. At the end of the day, a placement is generally, looked at by organisations as an individual coming into an organisation and being treated as if they're a normal employee and gaining that experience.
Yeah, and that's definitely the experience I had when I was on my placement. It's definitely invaluable. I just wondered as well, will undertaking placements help secure future roles, do you think?
I absolutely, and I'll be perfectly honest. This is one of these questions that I would be referring to individuals that I've had and how, as placement students in the past. So almost this is the sort of question that actually you, Julia, would be the better person to answer this one, because as you said, you've been a placement student and then you've gone on to other roles, had involvement with placement students from the other side of things as well over the time that you've been working. And it definitely gives students sort of an advantage to understanding how the world of work goes. I mean, what would you consider, Julia, to be your sort of biggest highlight of your placement?
Yeah, so my placement many years ago now, but definitely helped me secure my future roles. It was great to be in a workplace for my third year and actually putting all the theory into practice that I'd learned, and just working in an organisation and learning basic business skills to actually doing. I was studying marketing and did my placement in marketing, and actually being able to deliver marketing was completely invaluable. And it also helped me, when I came back to fourth year as well, to be able to apply what I'd learned in a real business context to my studies as well. So yeah, completely invaluable. And it did also help me secure my roles that came after graduating as well. So I would definitely recommend to anyone to do a placement.
I mean, yeah, you can't really highlight it better than as you said there. We've seen students, we've spoken already about how students can use it as an opportunity to establish how they want to be working. and where they want to be working potentially. And that's one of the questions I always ask a student when I see them first is, where is it you're thinking of going with your career? And placement can sometimes be that opportunity to be that stepping stone in the right direction to it. Students are not going to be walking into a placement with the big organizations necessarily. But the question is, if that's where they're wanting to go, how are you going to use a placement to help you get to that point?
Yeah, definitely. So another question is around how does the process of applying and securing a placement actually work?
So yeah, there's two typical methods used within the university, and this goes down to, again, the course of study that the student's following. So briefly touching upon your professional body placements, nursing, midwifery, paramedic practice, pharmacy, social work, and physiotherapy as typical examples. We've also got things like radiography. I don't want to forget, all the different courses we have that fall under this grouping. These would typically be, the process would be that students would be allocated to placements. And the reason for this is because typically they're going to have to be making sure that they're hitting a number of different types of placements. So courses like nursing, students are going to have to undertake, I think it's around about 8 placements over the 3 years of their course. And within that, they've got to be undertaking a placement in different environments within the NHS, because they need to be making sure that they can prove they've had experience in the different areas. So those are allocated by the school, and students are matched. And the reason for this is because you can imagine how many students we have. They're trying to make sure that they all have the right experiences, and it is like I often refer to it as trying to do a jigsaw puzzle where it's a unknown number of pieces and you don't actually have a picture of what the picture is going to look like at the end. It is a marvel, the job that the schools that have to match students do. The other way that students are placed is by a classic job application process. And this is by students applying to opportunities that are advertised for placements, either via ourselves, the placement team in the Employability Hub, or through opportunities that are posted nationally, posted by companies themselves, or by students securing their own placement by approaching their own contacts. And the reason we have the process like this is because we like to give students that opportunity to experience what the job application process is like. Because at the end of the day, if a student isn't able to secure a placement, they are going to have a top alternative on these types of courses for them to go through. But at the very least, they should get an experience of what it's like to be writing cover letters, working on their CV, and attending interviews. And that allows them to get a better appreciation of what it's going to be like when they have to go out to apply to graduate roles.
Yeah, and I remember for myself, it was a case of applying for a job just in the way that you said. So putting in an application, a CV, a cover letter, and actually attending an interview as well, which is great because these are all the skills that you need regardless of doing your placement when it comes to looking for graduate jobs.
Absolutely. And a large number of our placement employers utilize the same graduate recruitment process for placement students as they do for graduates. So sometimes it can be an extra advantage to students who might end up fortunate enough to secure a graduate role with their placement organisation, that they've already had either a year in the company or however long in a company to get a better understanding of them. The placement is very much used by some companies as a year-long or a 6-week, 12-week interview for the company. So it's not uncommon for students to finish a placement and to be offered extra work, either a part-time role for their fourth year of their studies, or the dream, a graduate opportunity. I know certainly I wasn't in this position when I was a student. If I'd started my fourth year knowing I'd already secured my graduate role for the following summer, I'm sure my fourth year would have probably been a lot more fun.
Definitely. And obviously the process can seem quite daunting, from applying for these and going for interviews and all the things you need to do. Is support provided throughout to students?
Yes, so that's a very important thing, and it's looking at it from where the support comes from. Students are supported before placement, during placement, and after placement, and that really is the responsibility of the university as a whole. When you're looking at students that are going through those professionally professional body placements, you're looking at students being supported by course teams, by their course leaders, module coordinators, guidance tutors, supervisors on the placement. For those that are having to apply for them, students are being supported by the placement teams, by their placement coordinators, their course leader as well. Students are encouraged. It is a very proactive experience. The more applications a student puts in, the bigger chance that they're going to have to secure an opportunity. But as we say, there's going to be one student who secures a placement on the first application they make. But there's also going to be students that are going to not necessarily secure a placement until they get into application 20, 25 or more. And it's a competitive process. They're not just applying against their classmates. They could be applying against other students within the university and other students from across the UK. But our placements are very well favoured by organisations because of the support that we give the students during a placement, but also the support that we give to the organisations on placement as well. It's not simply a case of us kicking the student out the door and saying we'll see you when your placement's over. We certainly are here to support, and I would say the majority of our students will simply just walk out the door when they go off to placement and come back in and just go, yeah, placement went absolutely fine. But there are students who don't find it so easy, and that's where the support comes in. The placement team, myself, tutors, students are supported that way. But I suppose the other important thing, especially it's been highlighted with the various lockdowns and things like that, is students are still able to use all the facilities we have here at the university as well. So we've got the counselling support teams are still all here. Just because a student's on placement does not mean that they're not able to use those services as well. And that's really important because work, we all know from working day-to-day jobs, work can be stressful. It's especially stressful potentially for students who have never experienced the joys of having to deal with office politics and how do you deal with a manager that you might not quite be getting on with and things like that. And that's what we're here for.
Yeah, no, that's great. So they're supported throughout, from making their application to when they actually go and when they come back. So it takes it makes it a little bit less scary, doesn't it?
I like to think so, and I hope so, yes.
Yeah. Great. And finally, do you have 3 top tips for a student when they're applying for and undertaking a placement?
Yes, and this is one. The longer I've been in this role, the questions, the answer to that question often changes. But there's a couple of questions that I always ask my students that stay the same. So my first one is, ask yourself, why can't I apply for this opportunity? And when they're looking at opportunities, they'll see things and go, oh, that looks good, or no, I've got no interest at all about that. Ask yourself, rather than why should I be applying for that, ask why shouldn't I apply for that. That will often help you understand a bit better about what it is you're looking for. The second tip, and it goes on to that from that part, is consider what you're looking to get out of placement. Don't go in and go, oh, I'm not sure at all. Have a bit of an idea. Are there any areas that you definitely don't want to be doing? Are there any areas that you absolutely go, I want to do that for a placement? And the probably the third and probably the most important one, particularly for these students who have a job application process placement model to follow, is make sure you're applying to enough opportunities. There's not a year goes by where myself or one of my team gets somebody coming into the office or getting in touch with us in the second semester or just before the summer starts and go, oh, I've not been placed yet. And we ask them, so how many applications have you made? Knowing full well how many they've made, because we can see that information on our systems. But they'll often say, oh, I've applied to a couple, one or two things. By the time they get to the end of semester 2, if they've not been placed by then and they've only made a couple of applications, that's normally going to be the fundamental reason as to why they haven't managed to secure a placement yet. We've got students that are going to work really, really hard. And you do have to work hard. You need to prove to a company your worth and why they should be taking you on for a placement. The companies that we're dealing with, that are dealing with these students that have to apply for opportunities, they're under no obligation to have to take a student from the university. And that's the fundamental difference between those students with professional body placements and not. So we look at it from a point of view of make sure you're applying to enough opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. There's some great tips and really important for people to keep in mind. And I definitely say when you're on your placement, embrace it and enjoy every minute, because they are fantastic and they're good fun and you make friends and colleagues for life as well. So there's lots of exciting things about them.
Yeah, it makes me really happy and have a lot of pride in my work when I see students progressing in their careers, such as yourself, Julia. When I remember back to you being a student, I was like, it makes me feel old, but it makes me go, yeah, I like to think that we had a little bit of help in getting you in the direction you went in, but a lot of it is down to hard work.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. My placement year was so important to me, and I'm a big ambassador of them, so I definitely recommend it. Fab. So it's evident after our chat today that placements are very beneficial in allowing students to put theory into practice, learn professional skills and values, and importantly, build their CVs. Thank you, Sam, for taking the time to talk to RGU Talk today. You can find out even more information about RGU placements at rgu.ac.uk/placements, and remember to follow us on social media. See you next time.